Hell does not smell like sulfur anymore. Modern hell smells like ozone, stale coffee, and overheated plastic. In the neon-soaked winter of Seoul, hell is a simple notification sound on a smartphone. Ding! The Telegram app sits innocently on millions of glowing screens, a blue icon representing privacy, speed, and freedom. But deep inside the encrypted tunnels of this network, a digital prison exists. This prison has no iron bars, no armed guards, and no physical walls. The prison is built entirely of 0-1s, JPEG files, and paralyzing fear. Enter Boxa, the Doctor. Boxa is not a person. Boxa is a phantom. In the physical world, Cho Ju-bin is invisible, a ghost blending into the crowded subway cars of South Korea. But in the digital realm of the Nth Room, Boxa is a god. Boxa does not need a gun to hold a hostage. Boxa holds something far more lethal. Information, a name, a student ID, a home address, a secret video file. The screen flickers in a dark room. Lines of text scroll faster than the human eye can read. This is not a conversation. This is an auction of human dignity. Bark like a dog, Boxa types. The command appears on thousands of screens simultaneously. Carve my name on your body, Boxa orders. The text is cold, precise, devoid of emotion. On the other side of the connection, a young woman, the victim, freezes. The victim is alone in a locked bedroom, surrounded by the safety of home, yet the victim is completely exposed. The camera lens on the phone is a loaded weapon pointed directly at the victim's future. If the victim refuses, the data leaks. If the data leaks, social death follows. The victim obeys. But the horror is not just the coercion, the horror is the audience. Boxa is not watching alone. The number in the corner of the chat room climbs. 10,000, 50,000, 260,000. An entire city of faceless spectators pays cryptocurrency to watch the destruction of a human soul in real time. These spectators are neighbors, teachers, colleagues. The spectators are everywhere, and the spectators are nowhere. The system is perfect. The encryption is military grade. The anonymity is absolute. Cho Ju-bin leans back in a chair, bathed in the blue light of the monitor. Cho Ju-bin believes this digital fortress is impenetrable. Cho Ju-bin believes the world is just a simulation to be hacked. But every system has a flaw, and usually the flaw is not in the code. The flaw is in the ego.
Daylight reveals a deception more terrifying than the crime itself. In the physical world, Cho Ju-bin is utterly unremarkable. Cho Ju-bin is a 24-year-old college student majoring in information and communications. Cho Ju-bin walks with a slight limp, wears average clothes, and speaks with a quiet, polite voice. To the neighbors, Cho Ju-bin is the boy next door. To the university professors, Cho Ju-bin is a diligent writer for the school newspaper. But the deception goes deeper. On weekends, Cho Ju-bin visits a local orphanage. The volunteer plays with children. The volunteer helps the disabled. The volunteer smiles for photos, receiving awards for community service. This public mask is flawless. The mask is constructed of performative kindness and calculated empathy. This mask convinces the world that Cho Ju-bin is a protector of the weak. However, a predator often wears the skin of a sheep. When the sun sets and the door to the small apartment clicks shut, the mask dissolves. The volunteer vanishes. The monster emerges. Cho Ju-bin suffers from a deep, corrosive inadequacy. In high school, Cho Ju-bin was ignored. In social circles, Cho Ju-bin was invisible. The physical world offered Cho Ju-bin no respect, no fear, and no power. The physical world was a place of rejection. So, Cho Ju-bin rejected the physical world. The internet became a new reality. Here, physical stature does not matter. Here, a limp does not exist. Here, cruelty is currency. Cho Ju-bin discovered a terrifying truth early on. Fear is a more powerful lever than love. The transformation was slow burn. It began with small online scams selling non-existent goods, but money was not enough. Money is just a resource. Control is a drug. Cho Ju-bin watched other criminals operate on Telegram and realized these criminals were inefficient. These criminals were messy. These criminals lacked vision. Cho Ju-bin decided to apply industrial logic to human exploitation. Cho Ju-bin began to study the victims not as people, but as nodes in a network. Cho Ju-bin learned that everyone has a secret, and a secret is a vulnerability waiting to be weaponized. The Boxa persona was born not out of lust, but out of a desperate need to be a king. In the darkness of that room, the orphanage volunteer died, and the digital dictator was born. The transition was complete. The sheep had not just eaten the wolf, the sheep had become the slaughterhouse owner.
This was not a crime of passion. This was a crime of engineering. Cho Ju-bin did not build a simple chat room. Cho Ju-bin constructed a fully functional, self-sustaining ecosystem of exploitation.
The Nth Room operated with the cold efficiency of a Fortune 500 company, but the product was human despair, and the currency was privacy. The mechanism began with the social engineering hook. The trap was laid on Twitter and Instagram. A fake profile, sometimes posing as a high-paying sponsor, sometimes as a police officer investigating a leak, would contact the victim. "Your photos are being shared here. Click this link to check," the message would read. Panic is the first vulnerability. The victim clicks. The link is a phishing tool. The trap captures the victim's ID, phone number, and contact list. Now the system owns the victim. The architecture was a tiered pyramid scheme designed to maximize profit and complicity. At the bottom lay the watch rooms. These were free marketing funnels used to lure in new users with samples of illegal content. Above them rose the premium tiers. To access the hard rooms, the user had to pay. But credit cards leave a paper trail. Banks are the enemy of the shadow. So Cho Ju-bin mandated the use of Monero and Bitcoin, digital gold, traceable only by the most advanced forensic tools, and at that time virtually invisible to local police. But the true genius of the monster lay in the gamification of complicity. Money was not the only price of admission. To ascend the ranks from an observer to a VIP, the user had to prove loyalty. "Upload a photo of yourself," Cho Ju-bin commanded. "Harass a celebrity online," the order went out. "Share illegal content you found elsewhere." By forcing the users to commit crimes to enter the room, Cho Ju-bin created a doctrine of mutually assured destruction. Everyone in the room was guilty. No one could rat on the boss without incriminating themselves. The staff were not paid employees. The staff were often victims themselves, broken by the system and forced to manage the rooms to avoid further punishment. This was the biological backdoor. Why use code to manage the server when you can use terrified humans as processors? The system ran 24/7. Alerts pinged, crypto wallets filled. The Nth Room became a perpetual motion machine of abuse. It was a perfect digital panopticon. The victims knew they were always being watched, but they never knew who was watching. The screen was the cage, and the internet connection was the chain. The numbers stopped making sense. The Nth Room was no longer a secret society. The Nth Room had metastasized into a digital nation. 10,000 users became 50,000, then 100,000. Finally, the counter hit 260,000. 260,000 unique IDs. This number is not just a statistic. This number is equivalent to the population of a mid-sized city. Imagine a stadium filled to capacity 3 times over. Every single seat is occupied by a silent observer, watching a woman plead for mercy on a glowing screen. Cho Ju-bin sat at the center of the stadium, the invisible conductor of a symphony of screams. The power was intoxicating. The physical world had rejected Cho Ju-bin, but here the architect was absolute. A single command from Boxa could mobilize an army. If a victim tried to run, Boxa released the ants, thousands of users swarming the victim's social media, family, and workplace with the stolen data. Resistance appeared. 2 college student journalists, known as Team Flame, managed to infiltrate the rooms. They saw the abyss. They reported the horror. Then came the mainstream media. The spotlight turned toward the digital shadows. A rational criminal would vanish. A rational criminal would delete the servers, wipe the drives, and disappear into the noise. But Cho Ju-bin was no longer rational. Cho Ju-bin was drunk on the algorithm. Instead of retreating, the monster declared war. "I am Boxa," the messages taunted the journalists. "You cannot catch me. I am the system." Cho Ju-bin posted the personal information of the reporters in the chat rooms. The hunter became the hunted. The arrogance was blinding. Cho Ju-bin truly believed that the Telegram encryption was a divine shield. The architect believed that by fracturing the chat rooms into dozens of smaller cells, the police would drown in the complexity. The nights grew longer. The coffee grew colder. In the small apartment, the air was thick with the heat of overworked servers. Outside, the Cyber Bureau of the Korean National Police Agency was assembling a task force. The net was being cast. Inside the screen, the users cheered for more content. Cho Ju-bin typed faster, moving files, banning spies, issuing orders. The pressure was a physical weight. The barrier between the digital cod and the limping volunteer was thinning. The execution of the crime was perfect. The system was running at maximum capacity. But in the world of high-stakes crime, the moment of greatest power is often the moment right before the crash. The countdown had already started, but the monster was too busy looking at the screen to hear the clock ticking. Code is mathematics. Mathematics is perfect. Humans are not. For all his genius, Cho Ju-bin forgot the most basic rule of cyber warfare. You cannot eat Bitcoin.
To enjoy the fruits of his empire, the digital gold had to become physical paper. This was the chink in the armor. This was the analog anchor that dragged the god down from the cloud. The monster grew greedy. The monster wanted to touch the wealth. Cho Jae-bin set up a primitive dead drop system. He instructed his minions, the slaves he had blackmailed, to physically collect the cash converted from crypto and leave it in designated hiding spots around the city. A water meter box, a potted plant, a public restroom. It was sloppy. It was low-tech. It was arrogant. The Cyber Bureau saw the traffic. They couldn't break the Telegram encryption, so they stopped trying to hack the code and started hacking the physical world. They tracked the money flow. Police surveillance cameras, the unblinking eyes of the city, were waiting. They didn't see a master hacker. They saw a nervous money mule picking up a package. The police arrested the mule. The mule was not a loyal soldier. The mule was a terrified human being. The mule broke. The mule talked. But there was a second, subtler mistake, a linguistic fingerprint. In the chat rooms, Boxa used a specific, unique style of speech, a mix of formal arrogance and specific slang. Police analysts compared this text pattern with thousands of public internet posts. They found a match, an innocuous post on a knowledge-sharing site, written by a user asking for advice on growing height. The user was Cho Jae-bin. The syntax matched, the grammar matched, the psychological profile matched. The anonymous ghost had left a signature on the crime scene. The IP address from the money mule led to a location. The text analysis confirmed the target. The net tightened. The physical world was closing in on the digital room. Cho Jae-bin was sitting in his chair, typing a command, unaware that the real command was being shouted outside his door. "Open up! Police!" The single mistake was not a bug in the software. The single mistake was the belief that a human being could truly divorce themselves from their humanity. He tried to be a machine, but he failed because he still needed to hold the money.
March 25th, 2020, the heavy doors of the Jongno police station swing open. The flashes of 1,000 cameras turn the night into a blinding strobe light. The world waits to see the face of the digital Antichrist. The world waits to see a monster with horns. Instead, the world sees a small, pathetic figure. Cho Jae-bin stands in a purple hoodie. A medical brace supports a neck that seems too weak to hold up the head of a criminal mastermind. A bandage covers a self-inflicted wound. The eyes are empty. The reporters shout questions. The microphones are thrust forward like spears. Cho Jae-bin looks into the lens. The voice is flat. The script is rehearsed. "I would like to apologize to those who were hurt by me. Thank you for stopping the life of a devil that I could not stop myself." The statement is theatrical. Even in handcuffs, Cho Jae-bin is performing. The devil persona is the final defense mechanism, a desperate attempt to claim power even in defeat. Cho Jae-bin wants to be remembered as a tragic villain, not a dirty criminal. The gavel falls. 42 years in prison. The sentence is historic. The South Korean government passes the Cho Jae-bin law, tightening the noose on digital sex crimes. The nth room is dismantled. The servers are seized. But the story does not end with a prison cell. This is the terrifying truth of the Black File. Cho Jae-bin was just the administrator. A platform is nothing without its users. The police identified the ringleaders, but what about the audience? 260,000 people. Statistically, in a crowd of average citizens, one of them was in that room. They were not all arrested. The crypto wallets were drained, the chat logs deleted, the apps uninstalled. They dissolved back into the population. They are sitting in coffee shops. They are working in offices. They are walking past you on the street. The human algorithm was not broken. The algorithm was merely paused. Technology does not create monsters. Technology merely hands them a megaphone. As long as there is a demand for darkness, there will always be an architect willing to build the room. The screen fades to black, but somewhere in a dark room, a notification sound pings. Ding!